I'm trying to figure out what leverage we actually have. What leverage do we have? They control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. It's their government. What leverage do we have?
That infamous video of House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries dates back to last February. However, while he was publicly telling voters that his hands were tied, that Democrats had no leverage, behind the scenes, he was privately taking quite a bit of money from big Wall Street donors. And in fact, last week, the publication Sludge reported that Jeffries' joint fundraising committee, the Jeffries Victory Fund, raised about $1.2 million in the first quarter of 2025 from donors tied to hedge funds, private equity, and other areas of the finance sector. So when we have a conversation about why there is no real leadership in the Democratic Party, why the Democratic Party has a super low approval rating among their own base, I would venture to say this very story is behind the issues that voters are having with the Democratic Party, because they're looking for leadership, they're looking for representation, and what they're really getting is a bunch of politicians who are legally bribed by the very same Wall Street donors that legally bribed the Republican Party.
Yeah, so look, mixed feelings on it in this way. Like, of course, I get it. Democrats need money to fight back against Trump. Trump's raising a lot of money. All these corporate guys are now, kissing his ring, to put it politely, etc. On the other hand, why do you think that the Democrats, when they were in charge, didn't do anything about private equity buying up residential homes? That's in our populist plank at tyt.com, and it's got over 80% approval in the country. In terms of don't let them buy our homes, they're gonna rob us blind and we're all gonna be renters and serving them for the rest of our lives. Oh, look at that, all the private equity guys that are donating to the Democratic leader. And look, mainstream media ignores this giant iceberg that we've now, not that we're gonna hit, that we've already hit and the ship is sinking, as the Democrats saying, there was nothing we could do, there was nothing we could do, right? And this great quote, what leverage do we have? But that's the same thing they said when they were in charge. And they're like, but we only have the House, the Senate, and the White House, and on the other side is a parliamentarian. Yeah. What leverage do we have?
I know.
Oh, come on.
So look, I want to dispel the notion that the Democratic Party needs this money to fight Trump. That's complete and utter BS. In the last election, Democrats had way more campaign cash than Trump did, and they failed. They failed miserably. You want to know why? Because the interests of the donors are counter to the interests of the Democratic voters. It's that simple. So that money comes with strings attached. And those strings, the voters want nothing to do with those strings. You get what I'm saying?
Of course, Hillary also significantly outraised Donald Trump, and she also lost. And by the way, there's another mistake that they make that's not related to this story, which is, but what are you raising the money for? To buy ads in media? How about you just go into media, into the content instead of the ads, and do your talking yourself? Oh no, I can't. I only have corporate talking points fed to me by the donors, so I don't know how to talk to humans. Well, then that's a double problem that the donors are creating.
Well, they're not, by the way, Cenk, I mean, the Democratic Party, or at least the politicians within the Democratic Party, are still operating in this 1990s era of scripted talking points. You are a robot. You do not think for yourself. You have the predetermined, pre-approved talking points that you just regurgitate. Sitting down and having a casual political discussion with a podcast host, for instance, is not something that most Democratic politicians are capable of doing. There are exceptions. Hakeem Jeffries is not part of that exception.
Look, let me just make it, and I feel bad doing this because it's Rogan, it's not one of us on the left, etc. But it is such a simple rule. It's called the Rogan Rule. If you can't sit down and talk to Rogan, you shouldn't be running for any office, okay? Because it's not like the brother's gonna grill you, right? He's very friendly to his guests.
Yes.
And he might ask you a couple of questions that are a little bit challenging. If you can't handle that, you just can't handle being in the race. I don't give a goddamn how much money you raised. If you can't have a human conversation, you shouldn't run.
Yeah.
These are not complicated things to figure out.
So let's talk a little bit about the donors themselves and where Hakeem Jeffries is raising this money from. So we'll start with Henry Laufer, who is the vice president of a hedge fund called Renaissance Technologies. Renaissance has been scrutinized by the IRS over its use of basket options. And no, that is not a fun Easter thing. It's a controversial trading strategy that regulators said allowed the firm to avoid billions of dollars in taxes. So Laufer and his wife, by the way, just gave over $600,000 to Jeffries in total. Then there's Stephen Ratner. You might have heard of him. He serves as the chairman of an investment firm known as Willett Advisors. So Ratner previously settled a case with the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, over allegations that he paid kickbacks to win investments from New York's pension fund, paying $6.2 million in penalties. So these are really, stand-up American citizens. He also donated $100,000 to Jeffries, and the list goes on. But for the sake of time, we'll end with Robert Goodman of Bessemer Ventures Partners. So Bessemer Venture Partners belongs to a venture capital trade association, the NVCA, that continues to lobby lawmakers against closing the so-called carried interest tax loophole. And he donated just shy of $63,000 to Jeffries. But not all of Jeffries' donors were from the finance industry or financial industry. He also got $44,000 from Mehdi Al-Hassani, who is a manager over at Palantir Technologies.
Yeah, it sounds good. Oh, is that Mehdi Hassan? No, one of the Palantir guys.
Yes.
Very different guy. I want to first do this super chat because it's so on point. Michael Cotavelli wrote in, Jeffries said he'll support incumbents over primary challengers. And I'm going to explain why and how it relates to the story in a second. He said, where was he when AIPAC went after Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman and other progressives? It's a good question. Look, he did light support where he's like, oh yeah, Cori and Jamal exist, yeah, right? Did you pour in $4 million to match AIPAC's $4 million? No, you didn't, did you, right? Out of your great Jeffries victory fund, right? And I say the same thing to James Carville. We'll talk about him a little bit later in the show. But he's like, this David Hogg guy, I can't believe it. He got to support the incumbents. Oh, James, were you out there like with pom-poms on for Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman? You weren't, were you? So the incumbent thing is total BS. What they're saying is you must support the corporate Democrats.
Right.
And that's how it relates to this story. If they're not taking money from questionable private equity guys, then no, okay? But you take money from people like that, excellent, Jeffries Victory Fund. Victory for who, brother? Victory for who, right? Victory for those guys. And by the way, a lot of those guys, including Palantir, giving to both sides.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So Mike Johnson was able to raise some money from Palantir, donors, and so this is the problem, right? And this is why a lot of voters sit out elections at this point. I mean, the largest group or largest demographic of possible voters in the country happen to be non-voters. And it's because they look at both parties and they don't feel like either party represents them. The Democratic Party used to be thought of as the party of the working class. And little by little, the Wall Street donors, the donors within the financial sector have chipped away at that Democrat identity for obvious reasons. Okay, the economic populism runs counter to what big Wall Street firms want. They want hedge funds and private equity firms specifically to invest and buy up residential real estate in the country. And so do you think the Democratic Party, knowing that they're funded by private equity firms, they're gonna turn around and pass legislation to ban private equity firms from investing in residential real estate? I don't think so.
Yeah, and so by the way, to Anna's point about Mike Johnson, he's gotten money from oil and gas billionaire Tim Dunn, Palantir co-founder Peter Thiel, Palantir CEO Alex Korp, and hedge fund billionaire Daniel Sondheim. And by the way, the private equity guys and the hedge fund guys that give to the Democrats and the Republicans, even if they're different guys and care about different issues, both care about one issue, which is keep all the tax loopholes for private equity and hedge funds. The carried interest loophole must be protected. The most outrageous, egregious loophole in our tax system that has cost us billions upon billions, maybe even trillions of dollars, right? No, must be protected. You bribe the Democrats and the Republicans. I mean, give campaign contributions, which is free speech, to both sides, so you own both sides. And so that's how this game is played. And as usual, I'll tell you last couple of things for me. One, mainstream media never points it out. We had to go and get it from Sludge, which is a great source for this type of information. You should check them out and reward them with your viewership, your readership, because they actually covered the real important issue of money in politics, right? And meanwhile, the mainstream media is like, oh, do private equity guys giving to both sides influence politicians? I didn't know that. Really? Wow, you're such a great reporter. And to the Democrats and the Republicans, look, guys, when Trump says that he's a populist, people get excited, and that was a smart strategy, right? But is he? Or is he just about to do another giant corporate tax cut? Is he giving away the house to all these corporations, including Elon Musk? I mean, last week on the show, we covered Golden Dome, which is this total boondoggle where we're gonna funnel hundreds of billions of dollars to SpaceX potentially. Oh, golly gee, 181 companies submitted applications for this nonsense project to begin with. And look at that, SpaceX is leading. What a coincidence, right? Hold them accountable. And to Democrats, I know you hate Trump, but you also have to hold your own accountable.
100%.
Otherwise, you'll never be able to beat those guys. You're not going to be able to beat them with corporate Democrats. Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris failed because they represented the donor class. Pick candidates on the Democratic side that bring the Democratic Party back to what it was, representing the average guy. You do that, you'll be in great shape. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.